Please welcome the General Counsel of Siemens, Peter Solmssen. And I thought you were the Prime Minister.
Oh, sorry. Thanks. Hello. I'm here to talk about corruption. We're against it, and I hope you are too. My message are pretty simple. Why now, and how? Now, you all know that corruption's bad, and you've probably read the same figures I have. 5% of the world's GDP is siphoned off by corruption. It's a tax on the poorest of the poor. The World Bank has estimated that it's a 4% excise tax on people who can least afford it. Bob Zoellick called it the rich stealing from the poor, and we know all that. But there's a part of it that I think you as young leaders need to understand, which is your role. And I'm sure you're thinking, I would never pay a bribe, and I would never accept a bribe, and this is a law enforcement issue, and why are we spending time on this? And here's my message to you. You have to be good at this for two reasons. Your projects will fail if you don't think about governance, stewardship, transparency, whatever you want to call it, integrity, give it a name. But you have to have good controls, and you've got to have the right culture in the teams that are operating on your projects, because if you don't, they will fail. People will get in, money will be siphoned off, your project will fail, and you'll lose credibility. And let me tell you what it looks like from the corporate or from the donor community. Let me tell you a story. I was at a meeting in Switzerland when the earthquakes hit in Haiti. And the Clinton people pulled a lot of people into the room and said, look, we've got a bunch of companies here. You guys have got ships and generators and medical equipment and food and all the things we need, logistics. Let's go to Haiti and straighten this thing out. There were a lot of big companies, a lot of smaller companies in the room. Everybody said, we're in, we'll do it. And then came the question, who are we actually giving this to? Because we're not going to invest a dime unless we know that these resources are going to be properly used. So my message to you as young leaders, if you're doing projects, if you're receiving donor money, if you're receiving money from companies, you need to think about how to make sure that everybody in your project, everybody in your organization knows where the money's going. It's not ending up in numbered bank accounts in Switzerland under your nose. Because if that happens, you'll lose credibility. Now the real why we care about this is the human toll. I can't get over this picture. This is a young mother in Sichuan, China. And she's mourning the death of her child, her only child, of course, who died when his school collapsed on him. And she knew, when this picture was being taken, that her child didn't need to die, because it was basically only the schools that fell down in her town. And the schools collapsed because corrupt contractors had used shoddy materials, and they'd paid off building instructors so they could save some money. So it was the children who died. Siemens is a big company. We have 400,000 employees. We do business in 190 countries. We see stuff like this. Our employees around the world see the roads that go nowhere, the hospitals that don't work, the wells that don't deliver water. We see the human cost, we see the waste, and we've decided to do something about it. Now here's the good news, and this is my second why. Why now? We are at a tipping point. You can sense the change. The people in this woman's village are angry, and they're still angry. They're not going to accept this anymore. You can feel this all around the world. Where did the Arab Spring come from? It wasn't the right to vote, freedom of press or something. It was corruption. That young man burned himself to death because he couldn't pay the bribes to be allowed to sell vegetables from a cart. What will bring people onto the streets? What will bring 1 million, 2 million Indians onto the streets? Corruption. So what do the politicians do? What do politicians do when faced with this kind of challenge from their own people? They race to get to the head of the parade. So now all of a sudden, this is an interesting topic. The leadership of China says that corruption is the single greatest danger to the state. The leadership in Russia says that corruption has to be dealt with, otherwise the country won't grow. The head of the government in Brazil has thrown 5 ministers out of her cabinet on corruption charges. Suddenly everybody gets it. It used to be that if you went to Davos, nobody wanted to talk about it. Half the people who went there were actually making money from corruption. Maybe a third. And the anti-corruption people were put off in a separate room, preaching to the choir. All of a sudden, it's on the agenda. At the last 3 G20s, corruption was high on the list of priorities for the governments. We are making progress. Now is the time. We can actually do something. This is a tipping point. And I think that if you, in your projects and in all the things you're trying to do, pay attention to this, you will make your part of the world a better place. I'm not asking you to clean up your countries. I'm not asking you to clean up your neighborhoods. I'm asking you to clean up that part of the world that you touch. So now I'm getting to the third part of my discussion, how. It's really pretty simple. It's really pretty simple. You just say no. And I'm here to tell you that it works. In 2006, when our company ran into a big bribery scandal, and we turned everything upside down, there was skepticism that we could make it work. What I heard was, there are parts of the world where there's no other way, where you have to pay. In fact, I was told that our revenues would drop by 30% if we took this anti-corruption stuff seriously. Guess what happened? After we cleaned the place up, revenues went up, margins went up, market share went up. 2011 was the most successful year for Siemens in our 165-year history. We learned how to just say no. I have a guy who works for me who did the rail construction in Bangkok. We build most of the regional rail in Bangkok. We have 100% market share, 100% market share. And I asked Ralph once, how did you do it? I mean, that's a challenging environment. How did you do these big infrastructure projects and not pay anybody off? He said it was simple. And this, I hope, will be useful to you. He said, I told my team, when the hand comes out, which it often does, don't say, compliance won't let me do that. Don't say, gee, I'd love to, but I can't. You say, I don't do that. I don't do that. And it works. Now, for those of you who are interested, we're going to be running a workshop later today about what works and what doesn't in the field, and I invite you to join us. But rather than hear it from me, let me ask Ronnie from our operations in India to stand up and tell you a story from her experience. Ronnie runs our pulp and paper business in India. I found out by accident that we were on the same tour here, so I thought, Ronnie, stand up and tell us what you see in India.
Okay, yeah, now I can hear myself. Okay, I'm Rani Sodhi, I'm from India. And in my country, there are a lot of instances of corruption and bribery, which are quite regular. And here I would like to share a couple of instances which I personally faced, and I said no. I have worked as a project manager for 7 years in Siemens, and in one of the instances, client's project manager comes up and says, I have a relative and he's there and he's opting for an union election, and I would like you to help him with some funds and some publicity and all. And I dared to say no. And I was sure that this guy can really ruin my schedules and give me all the troubles in the world. But to my surprise, after 1 month, he comes back and he says, I really, really appreciate your step. And I really appreciate it. And to my surprise, he helped me in the scheduling and extending me all the help required afterwards. And I realized at that point of time that thank God I said no that time. There was another instance where, a very different instance, where I was in desperate need of some approvals from government agency. And I was really desperate and looking for, bright people in the electricity board. And a vendor of mine comes up to me and offers me help and says that, okay, you need this, and I can help you in expediting your approvals and with all the unwanted means. And I said no. And within 15 days, I got the approvals thanks to the backup presentations and the technical backups which we could produce to the electricity department. And the same guy comes back to me and says, okay, you got it. I'm really surprised that you can get approvals from a government agency in 15 days. And in Hindi, he said that Siemens के products ही अच्छे नहीं हैं, लोग भी अच्छे हैं. That means that it's not the products of Siemens which are good, but also the people which are the best in the area. And I just realized that, one act of mine has really left a lasting impression of 160-year-old company with 400,000 employees. Each one of us makes a difference. Please be aware of this fact that each one of us makes a difference. This corruption and bribery are they are just, they are taking out the right resources from the legitimate hands. And we don't have any, control over it if each of us, don't control it. So please, my appeal to all of you, to all you guys, to your self-respect, to your self-pride, to your, to whatever, please be aware that each one of us makes a difference and say no to corruption, say no to bribery.
Thank you, Ronnie. Thanks very much. One last word, and then I'm going to get you back on schedule. We're not in this alone. We're all in this together. We've got a number of programs going from the side of big business to try and help smaller operations get through this, collective action, all kinds of programs. And I encourage you to come talk to us afterwards. Sabina, Birgit, wherever you are, raise your hands. We want to help you get through this. That's all I've got. Thanks very much. Okay.